Hey there, welcome to What the Freelancer's Career 2.0, a course that will kickstart your knowledge that you require for working in the new world, where your CV is just not enough. Today we're going to be unpacking the state of the gig economy and the freelance market, the place that you're about to enter or get better at working in. Please feel free to take notes and shout out my details at the end. I'm more than happy to field an email or two from you as and when required. I speak fairly quickly, so keep up. Feel free to ask me questions as and when you need. Hi, my name is Brent Spilkin. I'm affectionately known as Spilly with 3 L's. I'm a business coach and consultant to the media, advertising and communication space since 2012, and I'm more than happy to be sharing my knowledge acquired over the last couple of years in helping you boost your new career in the freelance space. A few years ago, it took me 3 years to write this book, What the Freelance, a mini MBA for digital and creative freelancers that was turned into a course lectured at tertiary education. A lot of the information I'll be sharing with you today has come out of the research and the writing of this book, and I'm proud to be sharing this information with you. During the research and production of my book, I had the privilege of interviewing 65 business owners and asking them questions around their benefits and frustrations when using freelancers. The same matters arose over and over again. The single biggest and most common matter was they wished that freelancers would act like a business and stop treating them, the clients, like a hobby. The requirement to have some basic business understanding and act like a professional was something that all business owners wish they had more of when dealing with freelancers. This would result in them using freelancers more frequently and the good freelancers on a more regular basis. I'd like to start this presentation with a personal story about my grandfather, who passed away in 1988 at the age of 64. He had been working for 34 years for the same business and was super proud of the fact that he had done so. The loyalty was one of his biggest drivers, and having worked that long for a single business was something he was very proud of and had told his grandkids about for many, many years. If I had to ask you or people within your network, how many of you would work for 30 plus years for the same boss, or even 30 plus years for your own business, you'd probably think I was crazy. The way in which we think of employment has changed, and the world around us has adopted a new way of thinking. The gig economy is made up of 4 major sectors. The service-based sector, which is what I'm going to be talking about with you today. The asset-based sector, the space that freelancers work in, and the platforms that allow freelancers to find work and engage with each other. But for today's purposes, I'm going to be focusing on the service-based freelancers. These are businesses that are horizontal in scope and don't require major assets to deliver the service. Businesses like Uber and Airbnb require vehicles or properties to deliver their service. They are asset-based freelance businesses. I'm more concerned around people selling their knowledge on an hour-to-hour basis. The service-based economy has grown over 45% since 2004 year-on-year in the EU, with 11 million registered freelancers in the 13 EU countries at the end of 2019. The major driver of this was the 2008 economic crisis, where 1 in 7 skilled people lost their jobs and had to go find work, and therefore joined the freelance economy. In 2020, we have a new crisis, the 2020 COVID-19 crisis, and this, I believe, will be the next big wave, forcing people to enter the gig economies. As you can see from this graph, the freelance economy has grown year on year, topping out at around 11 million active freelancers in the EU at the end of 2019. This number, I believe, will skyrocket with the COVID-19 epidemic. In 2016, the contribution to the UK GDP was about £109 billion. That is purely the freelance contribution to the UK GDP. To give you perspective, that was bigger than the entire UK motor industry's contribution to the GDP over the same period. There are now 1.9 million freelancers registered as public service companies, PSCs, in the UK. This is a kind of entity similar to the South African PTY or CC that can track freelancers as the kind of business they are. There's an additional 250,000 people registered as PSCs running a second job. It's their side hustle, helping to produce other income for their household. In the States, a few years ago, the New York City Council put in some new legislation that protected freelancers that were doing work for over $800 for larger corporates. In the past, the freelancer could not fight larger corporates legally because they don't have the backing, Now the government is stepping in to help them. At the end of 2019, in California, the AB5 bill has also allowed freelancers to be classified as freelancers or protected as workers based on a three-phased questionnaire approach. Again, the government is stepping in to help protect the freelance space. Globally, one of the biggest trends is mothers not going back to work after having their child. In the past, parents would have maternity or paternity leave and go back to work. Now mothers are looking for part-time work where they can work a couple of hours a month or a couple of hours a week using freelance platforms to help contribute towards the monthly expenses.
So here is an example of a website that supports the mom stay-at-home thinking called recruitmymom.co.za. This is a site which posts job offers to professional mothers that are looking for that part-time work. By 2023, half of American knowledge workers will be freelancers, and about 10 to 11% of that will be working strictly on the on-demand website platforms. Now, within the United States, in 2018, 35% of Americans said they had done some form of freelancing, and that number grew by 7% to 56.7 million. Now, what is interesting about that 7%, even though it doesn't sound like a lot, it's the fact that as compared to the total American economy, which only grew 2%, it is growing 3 times faster than the total American economy. Now, one of the misconceptions is that all freelancers are young 21, 22-year-old students, when in actual fact studies prove that baby boomers ranging from 40 to 45 is the average age. In South Africa, the average age is 41. Another misconception is that there are only creative freelancers out there. This is a real mistake. Freelancers are anyone that sells time and knowledge and has the ability to do that without only doing creative work. So why do companies hire freelancers? 3/4 of the people we interviewed said that hiring freelancers worked out cheaper in the long run than hiring permanent employees. Around half said that they got the work done faster, which obviously makes sense. And about a third said because they could not find good enough talent locally. When we asked freelancers why are they entering the freelance economy, the most common ones were obviously looking for money. They couldn't find work in the real world, but a lot of them just wanted flexibility, independence, and to own their own schedule. The single biggest stat that came out was that the majority of people in the freelance market made the choice out of a positive decision versus necessity. That means they joined because they wanted to, not because they were forced to. Now, you may have heard of the Big Mac Global Index. This index determines the price in dollars of a Big Mac in multiple cities across the world. Now, the reason this is an important index for you to follow is that those cities with a very expensive Big Mac are the cities you should be selling your services at, as the current exchange rates will make you far wealthier selling your hours in those countries. The following results come from LinkedIn, where people have used the word freelance in their bio. As you can see, arts and design, media and communications are still the most prevalent industries where freelancers work, but business consulting, engineering, education, IT are fast catching up with those traditional freelance spaces. Now, as you join the freelance economy, one of the single biggest thought shifts you need to have is stop thinking about the fact that you have a job, and rather that you actually work for clients, that you're less unemployed and more self-employed. One of the greatest indicators of the movement in the freelance or gig economy is the State of Global Youth Entrepreneurship Monitor. This case study comes out on an annual basis and asks the youth under the age of 25 that are currently employed their propensity to leave their job and join the freelance economy. Now, in the EU in 2019, this number was 17%. Obviously, it makes sense. People employed in the EU have great job security, medical, and insurance. In the UAE, that number almost doubled to 30%. So the propensity of people to leave their job to join the gig economy was twice as high as the UAE. Now, in South Africa, that number is 60%. We are a country of entrepreneurs and risk takers. The word entrepreneur from Latin literally means risk takers. So in South Africa, the chances of leaving your job to go out on your own is actually really high. Every year in Seville, Spain, there's a global co-working survey at a conference which indicates the growth of the co-working space. This supports the thinking of how large the freelance economy is growing. In 2006, the first co-working space was registered in San Francisco. As you can see by the graph, that year on year, that number has grown, with currently about 22,000 co-working spaces registered with the conference. 65% of people that use these spaces are claiming to be independent professionals and freelancers. And again, with the rise of the COVID epidemic this year, I'm wondering what that number will look like going forward. Another trend that is supporting the freelance space is very large businesses allowing their staff to work remotely on occasion, and this number has grown again from 2005 to 2016, with very large businesses like WordPress having closed all offices, having 1,200 staff in 70 countries, and not having a single office anywhere in the world. Large corporates like IBM and Microsoft are ditching their owned offices and moving their staff into a decentralized model. IBM has moved into the likes of WeWork globally, which now has over 500 offices in every single continent and is the largest tenant on the island of Manhattan and in the UK. These people help small businesses like freelancers interact, mingle, and possibly sell with larger and very large businesses. There are some great organizations like Unsettled and WeRoam.com that now facilitate freelancers to work anywhere in the world. Think of these people like travel agents, except for freelancers. They set you up with accommodation, food, internet, networking events, and everything else you require to work remotely and meet and network with other like-minded people. When it comes to old and new business models, what we have found in the past is that traditional businesses had an 85% core team. These are people that actually worked full-time in the business and delivered the service to the clients. Freelancers within the 15% on the outskirts when capacity was an issue, or we needed to have a little bit more particular skills that we didn't want on a full-time basis. The new models is a 15% core team with 85% freelancers delivering the skills. The 15% core team is often made up of sales and finance, sometimes marketing, and definitely project management. When we look at the costs of employees versus freelancers, as said earlier, sometimes the freelancers look on paper to be more expensive per hour than the employee. But over the life cycle of an employee, once you start adding things like leave, the bonus, the recruitment costs, their desks, chairs, office, laptop, softwares, and all the other peripheral costs that are incurred by having an employee, freelancers actually work out about 2/3 of the price of an employee over a 2 to 3 year period. When analyzing which freelancers are the busiest by industry, it's clear to see that the management and HR departments are the busiest with an average of 39 working hours a week. Considering that an average week of an 8 to 5 job is 45 hours, 39 hours is not too poor. Technology has been a great enabler helping freelancers find work, with over 64% of Americans claiming they've found work using the internet, and 2/3 says this number has increased in the last couple of years. About 35% of these freelancers are using online portfolios or the website to support them finding work, and the greatest stat here is that almost half say they are using less than 2 hours looking for work, which means that there's enough work out there for everybody. Now, once you've found that work, where do you work from? The vast majority of people are working from home, and this is not even considering the current COVID environment. The alternatives are the local coffee shop where there's decent internet and decent coffee, or often working at the client's space. As you can see, the co-working space is still relatively low down, but as stated earlier, that number is growing dramatically year on year. The next large component of the freelance economy is the platform space. Now, if we look at the States, these are the 3 largest freelance websites in America, American-owned businesses. Freelancer.com, currently with 30 million active freelancers, Upwork with 17 million active users, and Fiverr with a double R have about 7 million freelancers on their site. Let's look at Upwork as a case study. Last year, Upwork had 12 million active freelancers using their platform, with 5 million businesses posting jobs online. That equated to about 3 million jobs worked on the Upwork platform, resulting in about $1 billion in revenue. That's $1 billion in revenue on one platform, and that's only the second biggest platform in the States alone. These are PwC stats that relate to the EU only. In 2015, the contribution to the EU GDP from the freelance market was about 28 billion euros. That number doubled from 2014. It then more than doubled into 2016 at 80 billion, and PwC estimates that by 2025, the total contribution will be around 570 billion euros to the GDP. That is freelancers using platform only. These are the 4 largest freelance markets with an estimated cap of about 100 million people. Half of that being American, with about 34% of the American workforce being independent. India with about 15 million people. However, 40% of the world's freelance jobs are coming out of India, mostly due to price. The EU sitting at around 9 million people, and the UK now just over 2 million. Now, if you only take one thing away from today's presentation,
It's from this slide. This is based on many interviews over a long period of time. And basically, the stat is as follows, that within 3 years of starting your freelance career, the average freelancer is earning an average of 2.8 times their current market-related salary. So the example being is that if you're a designer and your market-related salary would be about 20,000 Rand, within 3 years, you should be earning 60,000 Rand. Now, obviously, there's a bit of a curve. So when you start your freelance career, that number will be lower. But over a period of time, it should get way more profitable for you to be a freelancer than an employee. The average is 2.8. Some obviously less, while some obviously substantially higher. Some local examples of online freelance platforms is Nomad Now. Nomad Now has about 60,000 current freelancers on their platform, and as you can see, charges between 4 and 5% of the work that gets paid through their platform. They are putting out job postings on a daily basis from multiple large corporates for different sets of skills. A very different platform, FlexiForce. This is a platform which allows large corporates to manage their supplier base of freelancers. So if you think of a large bank that has 400 or 500 consultants and freelancers at any point in time, this allows them to onboard them and pay them, as well as vet them through the process of bringing them on to their business. A great platform called Nameless VPA. A VPA is a virtual personal assistant. This business is built to help the small business owner, predominantly freelancers, manage everything from their billing to their CRM system to chasing money to even buying dog food for you online. Now, in traditional businesses, we all know what the company organogram looks like, the tiered layers of boss to middle management to the doers in the business. When entering the freelance market, it is also important that you think of yourself as part of an organogram and associate yourself with other people that are not only delivering the same skills that you have, but are multifaceted, so you guys can organize yourselves and act like a business the same way that a business does in the traditional sense. Many years ago, when starting a business, it was virtually impossible to own your own media. The cost of advertising in print and radio and TV was exorbitant. In today's time, all you need is a cell phone, and you can actually own your own media and media channels. In order for you to be a successful freelancer, it's essential that you understand the principles of marketing on this new online world. Going out on your own has risks. You no longer have a boss that supports you with pension, provident, savings, and medical aid. You need to make sure that you secure yourself and provide your own safety net for retirement one day, as well as the emergencies that crop up in our day-to-day lives. I'd like you to meet Haylee, a friend of mine who is a designer that for 8 years worked in a very large advertising agency. Several years ago, she decided to leave the agency and go it alone and be a freelancer. She was very pleased with the income she was earning and the kind of work and clients she was doing. But when she decided to upgrade her car to a German car, the bank refused to give her finance as they didn't recognize her as being actually employed. She could not provide pay slips to get the credits to get the finance for the car. She had to go back to her previous employer, get a job, work there for 3 months to get 3 pay slips in order to get the finance for her current car. The point of the story is that banks don't recognize you as employed unless you have a proper company. If you are a sole prop and don't have pay slips, you're deemed unemployed in the South African economy. Gary V, or Gary Vaynerchuk, you either love him or hate him or love to hate him. He was quoted about a year ago saying, "It's never been easier to start a business and it's never been easier to fail." What he meant by that was the barriers to entry are free to cheap. In order to start a business in the freelance space, you just need a computer or a phone and an internet connection, as well as the balls to go out there and do it. Unfortunately, because those barriers are so low, so many people are entering the freelance market, making it highly competitive. And this unfortunately results in a lot of people not succeeding because they only know how to deliver the skill they have and don't know how to run a business that delivers those skills successfully. In your career, I'm sure you've been exposed to IQ, intelligent quotient, and definitely of recent, EQ, emotional quotient. CQ is your change quotient. CQ is your ability to adapt and change to the current environments. In today's freelance economy, your CQ is actually more important than your IQ and your EQ combined. When joining the freelance market, as discussed earlier, there are a few other risks. Stress and fatigue becomes a real problem as you're always alone, you're always focusing on all the pieces and moving parts in your business. Your back gets sore from working in front of a computer and a screen all day. You're addicted to your technology as every single ping becomes more important than before, and the information overload is a real thing. every single piece of information you need to retain to run every aspect of your business. The single biggest risk is the psychological morbidity of not knowing the consistent income of the next few months. Not having a regular income on a day-to-day basis is something people cannot live with. Some months you'll have great revenue, while some months you'll have quiet revenue, and overall you're only running a 10-month billing model. You need to learn to live with this. Here's another great quote from a very smart guy in 2016. It won't be long before most, if not all, information workers are freelancers, and I couldn't agree more. Traditionally, it was the larger organizations that ate the little guys. But I believe that if the freelance economy can get together and act like a large business, we could eat the big guys alive. Freelancers are taking over the world one resignation at a time. So, with all this information, where do I start? How do I begin my freelance journey? We're currently facing a large-scale population behavioral change. You and I are burnt out and our value set being challenged to change. The why and way in which we work has been changing over the past few years, but within 1 month became outdated and in some instances obsolete. The trusted rules of employment and communication have been turned upside down, forcing a decentralized model of commerce with freelancers and independent professionals becoming more and more prolific. This is the current situation. The secondary unfortunate effects of the situation will be imminent mass retrenchments and then general emotional instability and poor mental health due to such crisis-forced change. So now what? So rather than sitting on Facebook consuming funny memes, I have developed some practical tools and steps to start your own revolution, your own reinvention and rejuvenation in this time that will kickstart your new path to financial well-being and a sound state of mind. Let's be proactive in taking the next steps and stop allowing our circumstances to dictate our future. With the course, this is what you get. A highly engaging online course consisting of 4 modules spanning roughly 5 hours of content. The worksheets and templates are yours to keep and download and are practical tools to help jumpstart your independence. You also get access to a forum channel of like-minded individuals to share your experiences and their own best practices, as well as to offer some much-needed support through this unknown highway with no immediate off-ramp. And lastly, you get the motivation and inspiration to start again. To find out more about our course fees, facilitated retrenchment workshops, or individual freelance coaching, please feel free to contact me. My details are as follows. Thank you so much.